Hello and welcome to today's European SharePoint Office 365 and Azure Community webinar. My name is Shane and I'm delighted to be joined by Frank Boucher, Microsoft Canada, who will be talking to you today about how can I use Azure Services in my projects. Remember to join the conversation about today's webinar on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is @EuropeanSP and our hashtag is ESPC20. Don't forget to check out the Resource Center. This is updated daily with the latest blogs, ebooks, webinars, and how-to videos. Simply visit sharepointeurope.com and click the content link at the top. This week, 25th to 29th of May 2020, all week, join us for free Azure Learning Online from Microsoft, MVPs, and industry experts. Again, see sharepointeurope.com for full details. After the webinar, we will have a questions and answers session. Type any questions you have for Frank in the questions window. Questions will be selected and answered at the end of the presentation, where you will be notified by email when it is available. And now I'm going to pass you over to our webinar presenter, Frank Boucher. Hello, Frank.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. Great to see you again.
So I go?
You go for it. Take it away, Frank.
Can you confirm you see my slide?
I can see your slide and
Excellent.
I can see you as well.
Perfect, cool. Okay, so welcome to this session. How can I use the Azure Serverless services in my project? I'm Frank Boucher, Microsoft Cloud Advocate. And of course, I will answer as much as you can all your questions at the end of the session. But if you may leave or if the question popped after this session, you can always reach me to those links. So I'm F. Boucheros on the social media. So let's get started. Need to click the slides, and now I click. Okay, so I have a few takeaways for you today. So the plan is to understand what's serverless mean, what it is, because we all start with different level of understanding. Some may already use it, some just heard about that. So let's level up everyone to make sure everyone is on the same foot. Then we'll build an Azure Logic app, and also we'll create an Azure function. So those are the two main services in Azure, very popular, very useful. So we'll play with them. We'll also see how they can work all together. I will show you a bunch of examples and even send you to GitHub, where I have a few projects online that you could go dig into it later after. And then also what I want to do is help you to see how can you deploy those things, giving you a glimpse about a CI/CD or different method to deploy in Azure those services. Ready? Let's get started. So, introduction to serverless. First, when the developer heard about serverless, they were just crazy. And usually I loud here like super, but I won't do that since you're maybe wearing headphones, so I will spare you that. But when you hear serverless, in fact, what you should see is less server, because there's always server somewhere. And it's not because it's in the cloud or it's serverless, it's still on a server. It's just that we don't care about them. Let me explain and why this is good. So when we start, long time ago, when we had an application, let's say you have a new project and then someone says, okay, we'll need this. So can you tell me when you are ready to go? So, okay, perfect. So now you have tons of questions to think about. Okay, how many server, how many disk? And then you order all the piece. And maybe, because of a pandemic situation, the stock are slow to come by, and then you need time to build everything. And now it's a very long process. So we thought, okay, let's go. And then we go with the infrastructure as a service, or the VMs, right? We all know VMs. It's way more easier, but in VM, you still have a few questions that persist. Still, how big is my VM, the CPU, how much should I reserve? And you still have some kind of bare bone machine that you need also to have under it. Then there's also the fact that when your app is up and running, you still need to patch the OS, the environment. It's not magical. You need to take care of them. So come now, the platform as a service. We see that in Azure with web app and different services. And it's really interesting because now I could focus on my app. I don't need to patch IIS. I don't need to install some OS upgrade or anything. I just need to care about my app. But I still need to think about the scaling because hopefully your app, your things you're doing is going well, and you may need to scale up or down to, save money. And that's nice, but you still need to think about that. So the next level of freedom, if I could say, is serverless. And that's where we'll spend a little bit more time about that, because serverless is just a piece of code or just a flow, not even code, that will spawn an instance when you need it and shut down after. It's not good for every situation, of course, because otherwise everything will be serverless, but it's very useful in many different situations. We'll cover that a few scenarios later on in the presentation. So what is serverless? It's an abstract of server, like I said, still server, but we just don't care about them. And then it's an event driven. Why? Because it could be a new file is arriving in a folder. It could be I receive a message in a queue. It could be a new record in a database, a HTTP request. It could be a bunch of different things, but it's an event that trigger that wake up my Azure server, my serverless service, and do something. And when I'm done, I shut down. And that part is super important because it's micro billing. That means that if my service is running for 1 second, I get billed for 1 second, not an hour, not a day, 1 second. So this is really, really cool. So when you optimize, then you only pay for what you use. Very nice, right? So that was like broadly for all platform at the serverless. Like I'm not sure for the pricing on the other platform. I'm assuming it's very also the same kind of thing. But let's focus now on the Azure service, the offer of Azure, the Microsoft Cloud. So the one that is very popular is Function. Function is a very convenient backend for code. So it's code based, it supports many different languages, and it's very useful. Excellent. Then on the side, you have the Logic app. A little bit less known maybe by developers, but very well known in integration, since Logic app is a flow of many different connectors where you could connect different APIs and services together and do some integration. Very, very useful. I will show you also different example later on. But they are not alone. They have many other services. Event Grid is really great when you're scaling, where it could manage a lot of entry points. So your entry point will also scale. Let's think about if you're doing IoT or mobile application, you will have tons of millions of messages entering at the same time. And of course, you don't want to get the endpoint throttle. So having an event grid will be able just to manage all those transactions. And it connects with all the other services, databases, storage, and all the others. And for developing, of course, there's many different tools. You can work with the IDE, suppose so Visual Studio is working very well. There's many really good extension in Visual Studio Code to play with those. And you could even play locally. I won't show you that today, but Azure Function, you could even try it locally and run it locally. So that's pretty cool. So very, very interesting. So ready? Enough slides. Let's go for a little, more in details. Let's go Logic app and then a demo. I got excited myself. I like, oh, let's jump in the demo. No, I have just a few more slides and then we jump in the demo. So Logic app are part of the integration as a service. And because we love acronyms, you could call that IPaaS, platform as a service, integration, platform as a service. They really love acronyms. So what it is, like I said, it's a very fast, very close to codeless, so no code, integration where you design. It's a workflow, it's very visual, and it works with a bunch of trigger in action. I used to have a slide where I tried to show all the triggers available, but that slide was never up to date because so many connectors are popping up every day that it was never up to date. And even these days, I'm sure by the time I finish this presentation, a new connector will be possible because now you can create your own connector. And that's really interesting. It means that if you're offering a service and you would like other developer to build application using your service, you could build your own connector, publish it in the Azure Marketplace, and then other developer could pick it and use it in their Logic app or other services. Very convenient. Come on. So this is a quick, I know it's very tiny. We'll spend time in another one. I just want to show you different, what looks a workflow. I'm missing something here. Anyway, so that's a flow. That would look like you have a bunch of little boxes. You could expand those boxes, of course, to see more properties, but then you have flow, so you could declare variables. You have condition. Here I'm doing a query against a Cosmo DB, and then based on the result, I have some branching, some condition, and I will loop through the details and do stuff. So it's really like a flow. So, so very interesting for that. And of course, it connects. It's kind of obvious that it connects to all the Microsoft services, but it connects to a lot of stuff, not only Microsoft. So you see here a bunch of different things, but we'll use later on. I'm using in my demo, I think, yeah, OneDrive, but it could have been Dropbox or all the others. There's plenty of connectors possible. So very, very, very interesting. My clicker is slow. So now it's time for the demo. Let's switch. I'm assuming you can see now my portal. So I'm in right now, I'm the Azure portal, and I forgot to get a tool in my excitement this morning. So we'll just start a tool that will help me to point you stuff. Sorry, I forgot. So now I should be able to zoom. Excellent. Okay, so we are in the Azure portal, so portal.azure.com. And now what we want to do is create a Logic app. So it's very easy to create a Logic app. You go here at create resource, then you just search for Logic app. There it is, Logic app, and then you could create one. Like in all good cooking show, I already have one ready. So we'll jump. So once you create, it takes about 2-3 minutes to create a Logic app. You will land on this blade. So nothing magic. You have a bunch of different properties here in the bottom. Right now I have nothing because I never run this Logic app. I was waiting for you, so you could see the historic, so you could run it again, debug it, see the input, the output, and everything. But first, before we can run it, we need to finish it. So let's go see the code or the flow. So we'll go in edit mode here. And my plan was just to use an HTTP trigger. So we'll do HTTP request. Could be done by Postman or like any HTTP request. We'll use a browser for that. So I want to get some information, and based on that information, I will create a file in a OneDrive folder. And what I want to do here is I want to concatenate. I know it's I will concat. Can I trying to zoom here to show you? Okay, you know what? Let's do this differently. Let's go peek to code and zoom. Voila. So what I want to put in the file is, I will put bonjour. You could see that previously in the text, and now I'm using the functionality of Logic app, and I'm saying, okay, concat some text. So here is the message, and I will use the trigger output from the query string. So I need to pass something in my query string when I will call this Logic app, and I'm expecting a variable called salutation. So from that, I will create a file and put that. And you can see here the name of the file I use the UTC, so I'm sure it's the last one because I tend to do this demo a lot. So sometimes I have a lot of file, but I made sure this morning that everything was clean in my folder, so we should be good. So this is nice. We can create a file, but one thing that is missing is usually when you have an HTTP trigger or HTTP request, you need a response. Otherwise, it's kind of, it's sad. So let's add a HTTP response. So to do that, I just need to click on the new step, and then I could just search for a response. And I have here my response request. Perfect. So we'll do that. And now I have my status, 200 seems good. Body, I'll say, let's say the file was created. And voila, now I can save. And just like that, I have my workflow. So how can I test that? So the HTTP link will be available in my trigger. So the first one is always your trigger. You have many different trigger available. Could be, like I said, HTTP call, a new file, a record, bunch of stuff. In our case, HTTP, so we need a URL. So that's the URL we'll be using. So I'll paste that. I'll put it in my browser. And now I need also to pass the parameter salutation. And if we look here, there's already some parameter in my query strings. I will need to add another one. So we'll do the app, and then it was salutation equal, and let's say, I will say Frank for now, because I don't know all your names and I don't want anybody to be jealous. So if I zoom, you can see that the file was created. So the response, the 200, we got that. So that's nice. So now we should have a file in my OneDrive. So if we go in OneDrive, I have a new file. The time is today and it's recent. Cool. And if I open it, I should have, bonjour, here is the message, Frank. Great. So it works. Let's close that. That's very interesting. But you might say, Frank, this is really cool. This is really clicky and blah, blah, blah. But how can you keep all that information? It's not very convenient. How do I save that? How do I keep that with my application? Well, this is the designer view. It's very visual, but of course we have some code. So if I switch here to code view, you will see, in fact, Logic App is a big JSON file. Here I have my response that we just defined. Let me zoom. I have my response with the input, the output, run after. So I have all my logic. It's a JSON file. And since it's a flat file, I could totally save that in my repo with the code and keep different versions. So really, really, really convenient. Let's go back to designer. So we have that. Another question that could pop your mind is, okay, how does it connect to your OneDrive? Well, there's connection. I don't know if you noticed briefly, I didn't want to spend too much time on it because it's private, but the connector was defined inside Azure. So there's a handshaking that was created, the connection between Azure, and I log in before the recording of this session, allowing Azure to access my OneDrive. So we have permission, and now developer can use this connection without knowing the credential and compromise, having an issue with my security. So it's very secure that way. And now if we go just back to the blade of the Logic app, if I refresh it, now we see in the bottom of the screen that it ran. So I have now some historic in my Logic app. I could click on it and I will see all the input I receive. So I could see, okay, the connection string, that was it. And I have the file, the input, the output. I will have all the information. So if there's a trouble somewhere, I could try to see where the problem was. I could even resubmit if there's something happening. So it's very convenient. Let's just go back here. And I think I did everything I had for the logic app. So now let's continue with more slides. Now let's jump to the other partner in the serverless, the Azure Functions. So let's introduce Azure Functions. Azure Functions, it's code base. So that's why you have this code and this event, because it's event driven. If you merge that, it creates the logo. I'm sure it was designed not around a pizza with a bunch of drinks. I'm sure it was well think, but in fact, it cannot be more accurate. It cannot be more truth, because it's just a code and event. So I really like this logo, by the way. I'm just kind of joking and messing around with it, but it's a great logo. So why Azure Function? Well, Azure Function support many different languages, not only .NET, they have Java, JavaScript, Node, Python, PowerShell. It's really cool. I did some stuff with PowerShell, many different languages that exist and they are supported, and they are planning to add more. I think I heard about Rust coming in, so there's more coming in. So really, really nice. Also, today's when you're coding, we don't need always to reinvent the wheel. So by default, the Azure function will support the NuGet package or the npm. So you could import very easily a package, something that was done previously. So you don't need to rewrite how the wheel was creating. You just need to install the package, and now you could use the wheel. Not sure a wheel will be very useful in an Azure function, but I'm sure you can figure it out. Even better, if you're using a DLL or exe, you could have that and do a call from the Azure function to that library. So very, very convenient. Need more reasons? There's tons of triggers, very efficient, that will wake up your function, and then you could have some binding. So very nice, because when you have your binding, the function is already in the context of that object and could interact with it very easily. So very, very, very nice. Did you know that Azure Function is open source? You can find it at this URL. And by the way, sorry, I should have mentioned that at the beginning. I will give you a link at the end where all the slides and the code from, I have a fly, I'm sorry. All the code, all the slides are available in GitHub. I will provide you a link at the end. But for the Azure function, that's the URL. So GitHub Azure function, the code is there, and they accept PR. Really cool. So you could have a look. There's plenty of extension and plenty of stuff also that is available. It's all open source. Really, 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 really interesting. Let's try that. Let's try to do our first function. Whoops, I click one more time. Voila, let's switch back to the slide here. So again, let's open another tab. This one. Nope. Where is it? This one, this one. Nope. Where is it? I lost my place. If you want to create, let's go. If you want to create an Azure function, let's go home and then create new resource. Let's start by the beginning. You could always do function, I think. Yeah, function app. The function app is the application where your function will be, and a function is really like one function, like library and then function. So you click that and then you click create. Again, I already have one created. It's not that far. I should have the tab open. I probably closed it by mistake. Let's go in this one. They changed the UI recently, so if you have done or experiment with Azure Function, the UI changed. I think it was at build, they changed. Now the UI is a little bit different. So here you can see that I have no function, so I'm in the option here, function. Of course, there's security and a bunch of other stuff. And I have nothing. So to create one, we just create add. And eventually, when my internet is starting, we can see here I have a bunch of example and template that I can use. HTTP trigger one seems like a perfect name for me, so we'll do that. And then you could select authorization level. That's very useful. Because it's a demo purposes, I will allow anonymous, but you should always use an authorization. And that means you will need to pass a token. So someone cannot, from the web, since it's an HTTP trigger and it will be exposed to internet, you usually want some kind of security just for calling. So you could have it like a token to pass. But just for demo purposes, I will use anonymous. It takes only a few seconds to do it, and we should jump into it. So now I could go in the code, and voila. So of course, right now I'm in the portal. I'm sure all developers are like, yeah, this is cool, but I want code in the portal. And I guess you're probably right. The portal is really cool when you want to quickly check something. You want to try your first function is probably this way, but of course you could do it using Visual Studio Code. You could do it also with CLI. You could do like a func, create new blah blah blah. There's a CLI where you could do all your stuff. You could create them with ARM templates and many different things. Just it's very visual to the portal, and it's convenient. So that's why I'm using the portal right now. So if we look this code here, it's very simple. It's a hello world kind of type where it's expecting from the query string parameter name here, or from the body an object, a JSON object with a property name, and then it will just say hello with that name. Simple enough. And if I don't pass anything, if there's no name, I'm expecting a nice message saying, hey, dude, give me a name. So that's nice. So how can I test that? Well, I could test right from the portal, very convenient again. I could test here. So if I just do this, see here I have my JSON object with the name Azure. And if I run it, yeah, okay, application inside is not configured. That's fine. We don't need application inside. Application inside is really useful. Just open a quick parentheses here. I didn't configure it because it's a demo, but application inside will give you tons of statistics. How long does the request take? If you had error, how many times the error was popped. So really, really cool. You should always do that. But in the demo, it's just taking more resources. And since I'm using like low resource stuff, that's why I didn't spend time to configure it. And also, I only had 45 minutes to show you stuff. So here we can see the hello Azure worked. So we have a response. That's cool, but it's in the Azure portal. Does it work outside the Azure portal? Let's try it. So we'll close this. And now, whoop, I went too far. I want to get the function URL. So I'll go get the function URL. And here I could, again, change my mind if I have different keys. I will use the default. My default is anonymous. And now I will pick my URL. We'll do that. Let's open a new tab here. We'll paste that without any parameter. So it's expecting a parameter or a body. Well, I cannot do a body in the browser, but I can clearly do a parameter. So let's add here name equal Frank again. And now I have my, hello Frank. So it is working. That's excellent. And if I add the security, I will need to pass another parameter called code and pass the token. Great. So we have this. It's all working. So my next demo, I could just switch briefly, is how can we deploy those things. So I won't go in all the details into it. Since it's in GitHub, you could always have a look, but I just want to give you a few examples how you could deploy some Azure functions. So here I'm in the GitHub, as you can see, and I have two ways to deploy the Azure function. And in fact, what I did is I took the Azure function we have. It's the code here and demo app. If I go in the simple trigger and go index here, this is the code we were using. I just changed here saying, you know what, hello, it's still me. So it's took the code, bring it to GitHub, and now we'll be deploying that thing. So let's go back to the root. So I have two ways. Since it's in GitHub, a lot of time, open source, it's very convenient. You could have those magic button, say deploy to Azure, or also a thing that I really like is using the ARM template, so Azure Resource Manager template. So here I have a template, and I create that in deploy Azure. So here I will have my template where I describe a few parameters. Okay, what's the name of your application? And since I'm deploying it from GitHub, I ask for the Git URL and things like that. And then I will create a website because an Azure function is using the same app service as a website, the Azure website. So I will create that resource, define a few properties, and I will get that to deploy. So that will create my Azure function, and then, come on, sorry, et voila, sorry, my keyboard decided to take a break. So here I had another resource to bring the code. So in app service in Azure, every app service have their own Git repo. So what I do here is I create a link, and I'm saying, you know what, your source control, your Git in-app service, link it to the repo, and I'm passing here the property. I could have defined the variables, but I pass it in as a parameter. Just saying, go get the code from this GitHub repo. Doesn't need to be GitHub, it could be your internal Git repository or any other Git, but you're pulling the code there and bringing it to Azure. From there, then your Azure function will run. So, okay, that's cool. If I'm running a script, I could use that. If you're deploying with like some process running on a machine, that's pretty cool. But maybe you would like to have a CI/CD. So let me show you. I have also an example. So I'm in GitHub. Of course, it works very, very similar in Azure DevOps, but here I'm in GitHub, so I will show you the method with GitHub. So in GitHub, the way it works is using GitHub action. I don't know if you heard about that. And to create an Azure action, usually you will click in this tab. So here is the main tab, the tab that is open code. And in this one, I have action. If you click that, what it will do, it will create here a new subfolder in GitHub workflows and create a YAML file. If you don't know YAML, it's like JSON, but without the curly brackets. It's much simpler to read, but it's the only code you could screw up with one space because it's indentation sensitive. So here, what you do is you just create a job, and there's many templates when you click that button, and we'll create a job. You have some Azure login. We'll get your credential in the secrets. I will show you that in 2 seconds, and then I will just deploy the package, just like that. And when you push to your Git, it could deploy in Azure. The secret, because you need credential to connect to Azure, and you need to give permission to GitHub. So usually what you will do is you will go in your, if I go back here, and security, you will have, oh, I'm not signed in, that's why. When you are signed in, you go in security and you have secrets. Secret is just a key pair value. So you will put information there, and then your GitHub will be able to get access to your Azure and deploy. And once you have it, it will create the Azure function here, and I use that to deploy. And if I go in that code, I have here the new version. So hello, it's still me. And if we go and just here, if I go in deployment center. So in the property, I have different property here, and one is deployment center. If I click on that, you could see that it's connected to the Git repository I was using the branch master, and you see when it was done. If I push something, I could refresh it. If I'm using a CI/CD, I don't need it. The code will be copied over there. But if I'm using the synchronization, like I said, it's just working like this. Cool. So if we go back, now the point is to show you how they work all together. And this is a logic app I created a long time ago that was doing a bunch of different things, even calling another logic app. It was just there to show an example that you could have many different things and a lot of complexity. Let's see some scenario where let's say the serverless could be useful. So let's say every Monday you would like to run a query that will find some resources and clean up your Azure subscription, deleting all the resources that you don't need, or maybe just, at least send you a report. I did something like that using an Azure function. Every morning that Azure function run, execute a PowerShell script, check my resource that are expired. I use the tags to do that, and it gives me information. In my case, it really deletes the resources because I do a lot of demo and sometimes I forgot to delete the resources. So it keeps all the resources up. It could be also done on a database. So that's one example. Another one, let's say you had the file in a blob storage. It could import the CSV in your data and update your Power BI. So that also could be done with Azure Function. So Azure Function are really cool to add more process, some power, some brains in application that already exists without changing the code. So that's pretty convenient. Let's see other example. Could be, that's the order is strange here. Okay, so another example, I'm still bringing it, I build it and now I'm trying to share it in GitHub, but I have a file, we are creating a lot of videos and some file arrive in MOV, the iOS format, and we need it all MP4. So what I did, I used a logic app in Azure Function with the Azure Media Services to have an auto converter. So you just need to drop the file in a blob storage. I could have used OneDrive, Dropbox, or anything, but since we're all Azure advocates, it was, I've always in Azure, so we use the storage. Just drop my file there, trigger my logic app. The logic app orchestrate all the other things, waiting for different tasks to be done. So it's okay, Azure function, do your thing, and then it will create a task in the Media Services in Azure. Media Services will convert. Then when it's done, Logic App will call another and process all the file, move the file in another folder. So it's all done using serverless. So very convenient. And when it's done, and the beauty of that is when it's done, I'm not paying for it. It just free the resources, just vanish, waiting for the next call, the next event. Another one that we did also, and it's very convenient, we did that to show that you could add functionality in an application without changing the code. During Ignite Tour, we used the Talent Trader website. It's an e-commerce with a completely fake e-commerce website where you can shop. And we thought, what if people could just send a picture and I'm looking for a chair. So take a picture of their chair at home and use their phone to browse, to have suggestion from the store. So we did that without changing the code of the website. In fact, we changed it, we had a button. And we use the same backend for the mobile application and the website application. So we use that, and it was possible from there to, from a picture, go in blob storage, change the thing, and produce different size of image with thumbnails. Let me show you how we could call, and I have 5 minutes, how we can call the function we just create inside the logic app that we have. So we'll switch back. And instead of, because time is flying and I want to have a lot of time for your question, I will just use one version that I already done. We'll pass through the code. So let's go. So this is my final with everything done for me. So it's the same logic app that we had at the beginning. And what I did here is I had an Azure function, and it's really easy to add an Azure function. I just need to go and search for, I think if I do just function, it works. Yeah, so I do Azure function, and because I'm in my Azure subscription, it will suggest me the Azure function I need. So I click the one I need, and it was probably the final serverless. So if I click here, that's my function app. Now I could create a new one on the fly from the logic app, or I could use my simple HTTP trigger. I'm going for it. And then you just need to pass your body. Remember, we could pass an object. So let's delete this version and see what I already prepared. Yep, I know. No, this object. So here we could see that I just paste my JSON, and it's this, from salutation, it's calling my Azure function, passing that to name, and then I should expect my answer. So if we try that, let's close this tab, open a new one, so I'm sure I didn't screw anything, and do salutation Europe. I think I did a typo there. So now the file test blah 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 is created. So let's go in my OneDrive here, and I have a new file created. If we look into it, we see, hello, it's still me, Europe. Cool, so everything works. So very briefly, with few clicks, I could integrate different services and have everything working together. So it's very, very, very convenient and easy to do. There's a lot of very interesting module in Learn. So I really, really interest you. You should do a screenshot of this, at least this page. There's a lot of function. It's interactive. You have short videos, trial. If you don't have Azure, or if like your Azure subscription is very limited, there's a way to have like a how they call that again, sandbox, an Azure subscription that is valid just for an hour, so you could try to create your Azure function, your logic app, and all the services. So very, very convenient. You could go at c5m.ca, figuring out AZ functions. So go there. You have a lot of module, very interesting, very cool, and it's all part of a Learn module in Azure. And that concludes my presentation. I thought I had a slide, but apparently, oh, it's there, it's hidden. Let's put it back. Voila. So the URL I promise you is here. So if you go to c5m.ca Azure Serverless repo, you will land in the GitHub repo I was showing you previously. So this slide deck is present, all the code with the step-by-step procedure. If you want to try by yourself, creating the function, creating the logic app, making them working together, everything is there step-by-step with screenshot that you could try at home, because we are all at home. And if you have any question, I will now spend time to answer all your questions. But like I said, if your question pop later in the day, you can always reach out to me. I'm in social media, so Twitter, Instagram. I have a YouTube channel, LinkedIn, and also I stream twice a week. You can always find me there. So I will be happy to answer your questions. DM are open, by the way. And now I'm ready for questions.
Thanks for a great presentation, Frank. Yes, and now we will start the questions and answers part. So should you wish to ask Frank a question, please type it into the questions window now. Okay, we have a question in here, Frank. Hi, I didn't see a connector to Azure Active Directory. Can you collect users from the Azure Active Directory and, for example, validate their attributes?
Yes, of course. Yeah. So Azure Active Directory is accessible. You could give permission, you could read permission. I'm not sure if you could change permission using the Azure Logic app, but there's a way to interact with Azure Active Directory.
Super. And that's the only question we have, Frank. So you've done a fantastic job at explaining it, which is a really good sign.
Cool.
Super.
Again, like I said, there's plenty of services available in GitHub. You can also go, I did recently a new project called the Azure URL Shortener that use also serverless. So as if you want like a very active project, that's another example. I think we all need some URL shortener. So that's another very good example where I use blob storage and Azure Functions to create a very budget-friendly URL shortener. So very cool.
Okay. Another one just popped in. Can we WebSocket in Azure Functions?
That's an excellent question. Well, like if you can call it, I'm assuming yes, you could call an Azure function. Yeah, I'm assuming yes. Yes, I would say. I will need to double check to be like get some or have more context. So if that person can reach to me after this session, and I will give some more details.
Yeah, they just put in a note saying without saying IR.
Sorry?
They just put in another note saying without sing IR, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. SINGIR?
AR.
IR. Maybe that person can reach out to you directly after this, Frank, and you can hopefully answer their question there.
Okay, sorry.
Super. Super. Okay, so on behalf of the ESPC community, thank you, Frank, for taking the time today to complete this webinar. We really appreciate it.
Pleasure.
Super. Okay, so just bear with me here for one moment, and I'll just get back to my screen here. Okay, everybody, that is the end of today's webinar. Please see sharepointeurope.com for further details on all upcoming webinars, or visit our resource center where you can find all previous episodes. Again, a big thank you to Frank Boucher, and thank you for joining us today. Take care and goodbye.